You're listening to the Assembly Call IU podcast and postgame show, the place where Indiana fans across the globe hang out online after every IU basketball game. If you want to get more out of being an IU basketball fan, then make sure you're subscribed to our email newsletter. Go to assemblycall.com/join today and sign up for free. That's assemblycall.com/join. This episode of the Assembly Call is brought to you by Crane Credit Union. Get a $150 deposit into your new Crane Credit Union checking account when you get e-statements, have direct deposit, and use your debit card. Plus, there's no monthly service charges and no minimum balance to open your account. Stop into any of Crane Credit Union's 14 locations or visit their website at cranecu.org for more information. That's cranecu.org. Crane Credit Union is federally insured by NCUA. And now, get ready for another brand new edition of the Assembly Call. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this special off-season edition of the Assembly Call. I'm very happy to be joining you here today. I'm your host, Jared Morris, and we have a special guest on this episode of the Assembly Call. We have Mark Titus here with us, college basketball writer for The Ringer and one of the hosts of Ringer University. Mark, welcome back to the Assembly Call.
I am happy to be here. It is an exciting time to be an Indiana fan, especially for me. Archie Miller being the head coach is very exciting. I got to play for him for 2 years at Ohio State, and I cannot say enough good things about this guy. So, I'm excited to be here talking to you about it, and Well,
good. We'll hold that thought about Archie, because that's actually one of the first questions that I want to ask you. But I do, I think many of our audience members know you. I mean, you've co-hosted a few episodes of the Assembly Call, and obviously many people know you from, your blog and your book and your work with Grantland and The Ringer. But some of our folks may not know your backstory, and I think it's actually pretty important to kind of put your IU analysis in the proper context. So can you kind of give us the brief kind of Cliff Notes version of your roots growing up in Indiana, and then how you ended up at Ohio State after that?
Sure. So first of all, I'll make it clear that I'm an Ohio State guy through and through. And if Ohio State plays Indiana, I want Indiana to lose by 1,000,000. I make no bones about that. A lot of people get confused, and I get asked a lot, who do you cheer for when they play? It doesn't matter what the sport, what the circumstance. I'm cheering for Ohio State. That said, like a lot of people who grow up in Indiana, once the Hoosier thing latches onto you, it's hard to let go. I grew up in Brownsburg, Hendricks County. I grew up in Danville, Brownsburg, just west side of Indy. Both my parents grew up in Indiana playing basketball all through high school. My mom played at Purdue in college. My dad played at a small school in Missouri and then transferred to Indiana. And didn't play at IU, but he was like friends with a lot of the basketball players and roomed with some of the basketball players. So he was really into IU basketball as well. I was just raised from my first memory is like throwing a little tiny plastic ball at a Little Tykes basket. And I was raised like every other Hoosier, which is just to live and breathe basketball. And, around the time I was in fourth grade or something, I had to make the decision whether I cheer for the Boilermakers and support my mom's school, or the Hoosiers and support my dad's school. And I tried to cheer for Purdue for about a year, and it just wasn't working. It just wasn't me. So I ended up, supporting Indiana, and I grew up and then right around, I think I was in eighth grade when the 2002 team went to the Final Four and lost to Maryland in the title game. And that was pretty much it. I mean, at that point it's over, and I'm just an Indiana guy. So I ended up at Ohio State because the short version of the story is Mike Davis was Indiana's coach. The long version of the story is that I wasn't ever good enough to play at a Big Ten school, and I kind of knew that. So I was looking to go other places to play college basketball. And then Mike Conley and Greg Oden, who I was really good friends with growing up and played AAU basketball with, they committed to Ohio State basically because of Mike Davis. Like they were interested in IU, but I think talking to Mike Davis kind of swayed them away from IU. And I'll just leave it at that. I think Indiana fans can fill in the blanks on that one. So they committed to Ohio State, and they kind of said in half joking, half serious, they're like, hey, instead of going and playing at some small school, why don't you just come to Ohio State and hang with us? And I was like, hey, that seems like a fun idea. So That's what I did. I was a manager for about 3 weeks on the basketball team at Ohio State, and then I quit that. And then they ran out of bodies to conduct a practice. They only had like 8 or 9 healthy guys. They couldn't even play 5-on-5, so they asked me to come help out at practice. And I said the right things and did the right things, and got a spot on the team and stuck around for 4 years. So that's pretty much my story. But yeah, like I cheer for Ohio State. I'm loyal to my school, that I'm an alum of. But at the same time, when you spend 18 years of your life cheering for Indiana, it's hard to let that go. So I still cheer for the Hoosiers as well.
And importantly, you understand the context of IU basketball, kind of where IU was, what's happened to the program.
I think so much for me, as I've gotten older, I've gotten like more sentimental about everything. And a lot of it has less to do with like the school of the Indiana University school, which my brother is 3 years older than me, and he went to IU. So I spent plenty of time when I tell people in Ohio that I went to high school at IU, because when I was in high school, I would go visit my brother when he was down there. So, but it's less to do with like the school and the university, and more to do with just like the idea of what basketball is in the state of Indiana, and especially living in Ohio and coming to school in Ohio where football is king. And I go to high school games around here, and I just try to tell people like it's so much bigger in Indiana. And like I'm trying to wave the flag as best I can for just the entire state. And I think that's part of why I still latch on to Indiana is like, yeah, I went to school to do well. Like I have a lot of friends and family that went to school there. I enjoyed my time when I visit people in Bloomington and stuff, but it's more like, I'm a huge fan of in the state of Indiana basketball. Just this idea that like basketball played in that state is so much different than anywhere else. Whether that's true or not, it's irrelevant. Like I believe in that, like a lot of people who live in Indiana do. And so I cheer for Indiana partly because I just want to put forth this idea that like Indiana basketball is better than any other basketball out there. And that it's kind of like, if you're an outsider, you roll your eyes at that. But if you're from Indiana, you're like, yes, that's totally true. I'm right there with you. So there's a lot of that at play too.
I'm nodding vigorously because I agree with you.
Yeah, right.
As someone who grew up in Indiana and then has spent time living in Florida and Texas, a couple of football states, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm. So when you were at Ohio State, Archie Miller was one of the assistants. How long was he there?
Yeah. He was there for 2 years that I was there. Yeah.
And what was he like as a coach? Because you've made a few references to him and said a lot of really positive things.
So I always be careful, like trying to, because I got burned by John Gross with this, because I played for John Gross at Ohio State too, and when he got hired at Illinois, a lot of people were asking me like, "What do you thought of him?" And I said he's the smartest coach I've ever played for, which is still true, and I still stand by that. But I'm going to be cautious saying like this guy's going to win a lot of games, because it doesn't work that way, and there's so much more that goes into coaching than that. So I'm not going to do that, because I've already been burned kind of tooting John Gross's horn, and then he just got fired at Illinois. So I can't promise that Archie's going to win or lose or whatever. But when I think of like the culture of what Indiana basketball should be and what the fans of Indiana, and I know that a lot of people like to play up this idea that there's a rift between like the old school fans who think Bob Knight should come back, or like we need to get the next Bob Knight, and then the new school fans who are like, let it go, we got to figure out what's next. But I don't think that's the case. I think like generally most Indiana fans have like the same sort of vibe of what they want their basketball program to be. And I think Archie Miller's perfect. I mean, I think that's the reason I'm most excited, is that he gets what it means to coach at Indiana. And that's not to say that like Tom Crean didn't. I think Tom Crean, like, and he's proven since he's been fired, like how loyal he is to Indiana. And, I saw he went to the Pacers game a couple nights ago, and he's going, he's still spending time around Bloomington. And I think Tom Crean genuinely loves Indiana, but I think there's a difference between like loving Indiana and understanding Indiana. And I have no doubt in my mind that Archie Miller understands like the culture of what Indiana basketball should be, and like this whole idea of doing things the right way, and just on down the line, like all these cliches that basketball in Indiana try to prop up, that again, outsiders probably roll their eyes and say that's the lamest, corniest thing I've ever heard. But people in Indiana are like, well, we don't care. This is what we do. This is how we play basketball. Archie gets that. And I think for me as a fan, I'm really excited that he's the coach, because that's, to me, like that's the most important thing, is just establishing a culture, whether you win or lose. When you say Indiana Hoosiers, it has to like evoke some sort of emotion in people. And there are a lot of schools that do that around the country. Like whether you like what John Calipari is doing at Kentucky or not, when I say Kentucky basketball, you think of something. There's something that immediately comes to mind, and they have a very specific brand. And I don't really feel like Indiana's had a brand since Bob Knight's left. That doesn't necessarily mean Indiana should go try to recapture what Bob Knight's brand was, but there needs to just be like this culture. There needs to be a distinct idea of what it means to be an Indiana basketball player and basketball team, and I think Archie's going to bring that. So I'm really excited for that.
What are some of the specific nuances that you think Archie understands and will be able to bring back that have been missing recently?
Well, the one thing that I would say, like, to give you an idea of the kind of coach he is, he was one of my favorite people off the court. Like, he would he genuinely cares about players. He treated everybody the same, whether you were the star player. I was obviously the walk-on, so I can vouch for this, that I would watch how he'd interact with the stars on the team and then how he talked to me, and it was the exact same way. And off the court, he was like your best friend. How's life? You don't even talk about basketball. You just talk about how's your family, how are classes, how's your girlfriend, whatever. And then when you step on the court, he would kick your ass so hard. And I will never forget, like, the first summer that he showed up at Ohio State. And I was doing my thing at this point where I was just kind of like the goofball on the team and, you know, the comedic relief. And, like, I would take drills seriously, but it was like, yeah, whatever. If I miss some shots, who really cares? I'm never going to play anyway, whatever. And the very first summer workout that I had with him, he made me play one-on-one full court, which to like 10 or 15 points, which was like the most exhausting thing I've ever done in my life. And he was yelling at me the entire time. And I'm just like looking over at him, like I'm looking over at the other coaches, like, is someone going to step in and tell this dude that I don't actually play and I don't need to do this? And I brought it up to him after I graduated. And like I saw him. I actually saw him when he was out in Arizona. I was visiting a buddy out there, and I went and popped into his office, and we were talking about, you know, our time at Ohio State and stuff. And he's like, "Listen, man, that's how I coach. Like, I don't care who you are. If you're wearing the jersey and you're on my court, I'm bust. You got to bust your ass for me." And that's another thing I think IU fans will really appreciate, is that he just kind of, like, whatever it means for a coach to quote unquote get it. I think he gets it. Like, he understands. There's like a fine line between, you know, like, pushing guys and just being a jerk about it and just kind of going on a power trip and pushing guys to get the most out of them. And I can honestly say that I got the 1 year that I was the best player I've ever been in my life, and no one noticed the difference because I played the same amount every game. But the 1 year that I was the best player in practice was the second year I was playing for Archie, and I don't think that's a coincidence. So he's a great dude off the court, but he'll kill you on the court, and that's kind of a perfect coach to me. So.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, he has such an extensive background in coaching with his dad and with Sean, obviously.
Yeah.
But I've heard him a couple of times mention that one of the most important lessons that he ever learned as a coach, he learned from Thad Matta, and it was about the importance of building relationships with players. You know, not just being all about the X's and O's, but really building the relationships. How did that manifest itself in Thad's program? And did you see growth in Archie from when he started, you know, to when you left in that regard?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I certainly know that Thad feels that way, that the very first thing you have to have as a coach is just your player's respect. You have to, when you're yelling at a player, the player has to know that you're yelling at him because you want him to be the best that he can be, and not because you're, again, just like on some power trip and you want to prove that I'm more important than you are and I get to yell at you, and this is how this works, is you come into my gym and I yell at you for 2 hours and then you go home. And that's definitely true of what Coach Matta the culture he built at Ohio State when I was there was just, it was very much a player's atmosphere where he would get on you, but you always knew that he was doing it from the right place. Like, I noticed this, you know that you want to be better. I noticed that this will make you better. So I'm going to yell at you and push you and try to make you better. And yeah, I mean, that was something that was obvious with Arch. I think, like, when he kind of first got there, maybe he was a little, you know, like I said, the first workout, he was busting my ass, and I was kind of unsure of what was his motive with all of this. But as you start to got to know him a little bit, you realize, like, where he was coming from and just how genuinely good of a dude he was, and he cares about people. And again, like, the thing that jumps out to me is I mentioned it when I was talking earlier, and I guess I just now realized how big of a deal it was, is I'm out visiting my buddy in Arizona. This was after I got done playing, and Arch was assistant for his brother out at Arizona. I'm visiting one of my friends. I'm like, hey, we should go to the gym and see if Arch is in. I wonder if he'll remember me. And I just kind of wanted to pop in my head and be like, hey, coach, remember when I played for you a couple years ago or whatever? And he dropped everything he was doing and had me into his office, and we talked for like an hour, and he's just like, how's life? How, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I mean, like being in a position where I am, you kind of notice the way people, like being a walk-on, you notice like the way I'm treated, I think goes a long way. Like, cause it's really easy to treat Greg Oden with a ton of respect and Mike Conley with a ton of respect because they're going to play in the NBA and they're the face of the franchise and all that kind of stuff. But to treat me, who can do nothing for you, and I heard him say that in his introductory press conference in Indiana, and I kind of selfishly thought of myself when Arch said that when he was being introduced as a coach. He said, I forget what the word, respect or whatever is what you do for people when they can do nothing for you. And I kind of thought of myself and how he treated me, because that's just the guy he is. He's like, Mark, I know you can do nothing for me in my career, but I'm going to treat you with respect, and I want to know how you're doing in your life and all that kind of stuff. So. That's definitely something that was a big deal to Coach Mata, and it's certainly a big deal to Arch, and that's why I'm excited to have him coach. So
you mentioned earlier that Indiana hasn't really had a brand since Bob Knight.
Yeah,
I agree with. What do you think the brand of IU basketball should be, and what do you think it will be under Archie Miller?
I think when I think of Indiana, I mean, I think of like underdogs, and it's like the weirdest saying because I say we're as, again, it's hard to separate the school and the university and the state of Indiana, but to me, it's like the culture should be intertwined. And I think of like just a team that basically the 2002 Indiana team that was just like, I don't understand how they're doing this. It's like the movie Hoosiers, basically. We play hard. We embody a ton of cliches. That's not to say like, I don't think, Indiana should have exciting basketball or have athletes or be a good team. I mean, you obviously should aspire to get the best recruits and all that kind of stuff. You should be a powerhouse. That's obviously important to aspire to do that. But the whole idea of just like the coach speak, the hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Like that's the kind of stuff I always think of when I think of Indiana basketball. All the coaches I had growing up that just like loved that kind of stuff, where I'd roll my eyes and I'm like, that's so stupid, coach. Why are we doing this? Why can't we just like you throw a behind the back pass, your ass is on the bench for the next 20 minutes because that's not how we play, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know, like defense first, that's definitely going to be a thing. I know that Arch is huge on defense. He'll do defense first and do the pack line, which like make it really tough for teams to score. He's going to run transition. He was a great transition coach when I was at Ohio State, and I think that's continued to date. And I haven't really followed his team super closely, but I assume it was because he was great at coaching transition offense and getting guys to run up and down and be confident in your shot, which is, again, I think something IU fans have gotten used to with all the things, bad things you want to say about Tom Crean. He was great at that, getting guys to get out in transition and if you're open, shoot the ball. So yeah, like to me, that's Indiana basketball. It's like, first of all, it starts on the defensive end. Secondly, it's this idea that like the sum of the parts is, I always mess up whatever that saying is, the sum of the parts is greater than the individual, whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah, I always mess that up. But that is to me what Indiana basketball should be. And that's what I'm hoping they get back to. And then basically if you can get to that and then you plug in great talent, you start landing these top recruits at from Indiana and all that kind of stuff, then you're cooking with something. So establish the culture, get the talent, and they'll be fine.
Do you think that's reasonable to expect? I mean, that Indiana, because obviously Indiana fans, given the resources and the tradition and the local recruiting base, Indiana fans expect to be able to compete on the highest levels. Playing a smart strategy, getting top level recruits. Do you think in time that's something Archie Miller can do in Bloomington?
Oh yeah, I mean, like that's what I get in a ton of arguments about this because obviously a lot of people around the country think Indiana's a dinosaur and the best days are behind it and it'll never return to being a great program again and all that kind of stuff. And then they'll cite other programs that are in a similar boat, like a UCLA kind of always gets brought up, how their heyday is come and gone and that kind of stuff. And the big difference is Indiana, one, the fans still care more than anywhere else in the country. Like it is absolutely insane. And the most obvious point to that is the 2008 season when IU won 6 games and Assembly Hall is still selling 14,000 tickets a night. I mean, that is just like what else needs to be said about Indiana fans? Like, as long as the fans care, which IU fans will always care. 2009 season, I'm sorry, I just thought back on, I was wrong. Tom Crean's first year. Yeah. But as long as the fans care, there's always going to be a chance. You're always going to have like money pumped into the program. You're always going to have like the chance to land the recruits, that kind of stuff. And then the other part of it is, yeah, we got the best recruiting base in the little hotbed in the country. So I don't think it's unreasonable. I think that's what, I mean, it seems ridiculous to outsiders because they don't know all the resources have never gone away at IU, and they never will go away probably. Basketball in Indiana is so ingrained into the culture that there's always going to be top talent there. The fans are always going to care deeply. And if you can just find the right guy to push the buttons and make it work, it'll happen. So hopefully Arch is the guy. I mean, it's not as dire. Like Indiana basketball to me, it's been 30 years since the last national title, I know, but like the program is not as dire as what I think a lot of people pretend like it is. I mean, we're still winning Big Ten titles. You're still getting guys drafted. They're still, making waves recruiting. Really only missed that. Like Mike Davis probably wasn't the right hire, but whoever gets hired after a legend and is the right guy, like that never happens anyway. So whatever. Kelvin Sampson probably could have been the right hire. I mean, like what, like if he does it, obviously he cheated and all that kind of stuff, but like maybe the program, like maybe he's the right guy for the job. And Crean was a decent thing. I don't know. I'm spinning my wheels here, but yeah, I think like Indiana's fine and it'll always be fine. It'll always have the resources and you just got to plug in the right coach and everything will take care of itself. And hopefully that's going to get done. So.
And part of that is recruiting in state, taking advantage of that fertile resource. Mm-hmm. And Archie has made it a priority with his inside-out recruiting strategy. How important do you think it is that Indiana University be able to keep the best players in state regularly at home?
Oh, that's vital. I mean, that's what the fans want, right? Like that's certainly what I want as a fan. Because again, like it's hard to teach outsiders what basketball means in Indiana. So why not just get the kids from Indiana that understand what it means? That's honestly, that's what the whole thing to me has been. It's just like a culture war of trying to fight trying to establish the culture at IU and trying to get back to Indiana basketball. And I think if you get kids from Indiana that are growing up on this, that are drinking the Kool-Aid, like this is whether it's real or not, maybe basketball in Indiana really isn't that much different than basketball in California. And we just pretend like it is. It doesn't matter. Like if we think it is, then it is. And that's perception is reality. And you need people that can tap into that. And, I think getting Indiana recruits is a huge deal. It obviously matters a lot to the fans, but I think it matters in establishing what it means to be an Indiana Hoosier and to play for the name on the front of the jersey. I mean, all that kind of stuff that's corny. Like IU doesn't have names on the backs of the jerseys. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that feeds into like the culture of Indiana basketball as well, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that should be the goal. Indiana Mr. Basketball, even if he sucks, just throw Indiana Mr. Basketball a scholarship every single year. And I think you've already won over half the fan base if you do that.
So as we move from the general and kind of get more specific, and the team that Archie has coming back right now, as you look at it, and I suppose base your answer either on, Archie's style of play or just your experience actually, playing and developing under Archie one-on-one, but what player on the current roster do you think stands to benefit the most from the switch to Archie? And obviously we're still waiting decisions from Thomas Bryant, James Blackman Jr., and Robert Johnson on what they're going to do with OG already gone. But if just assume that maybe those guys come back and include them in your answer. But which guy do you think stands to benefit the most from the switch to Archie?
Oh, it's definitely. I mean, assuming all those guys come back, it's definitely Blackman. I mean, Blackman is going to be. Archie is just like licking his lip. I guarantee he's just watching film on Blackman and just filming at the mouth.
He actually said today he met with the media today and said Blackman's the best shooter he's ever had a chance to work with.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be
kind of a shot at you. Kind of a shot at you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. I didn't think about that. Yeah, no kidding. So I need to remind him of that. It's going to be Blackman because I mean, like, the big criticism of Blackman obviously is his defense. That he doesn't. He just wants to score. He wants to get out and run, and not committed to the defensive end, and that is going to change. I guarantee that's going to change. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a lockdown defender. He's not going to be a guy that they're going to put on the best offensive player on the other team or anything like that, but he is going to play defense. He's going to get after it because Arch is not going to tolerate that. I mean, he's a defensive coach first and foremost. And then, like I said earlier, like his offense is predicated on transition, which is where Blackman thrives, and Robert Johnson. Like both those guys are going to be just absolutely awesome to watch. Just getting up and down, shooting threes, all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, Blackman to me, because all the weaknesses that Blackman has in his game are things that Archie takes very seriously and will just work out of him and figure it out. So, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming Blackman comes back because first of all, I'm not really sure what his draft stock is, but secondly, it'd be smart for him to come back anyway because he'll iron out all the kinks in his game and give himself a shot. So. That's pretty clearly the answer to me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The wind seems to be blowing a little bit more in that direction recently. But, I'm curious because that's an interesting answer, and I think I agree with you. What would be different under Archie Miller? Like, why would he be able to do that? Is it because he would sit Blackman on the bench if he's not playing defense? Is it because he could reach him in a different way? Like, why would that change?
I think, well, I would just say like the defense is the emphasis. I mean, Tom Crean's the offensive coach. That he's great at offense. That's undeniable. Like Indiana's offense, for as bad as some of the teams would look sometimes, and wins and losses would come and go and all that kind of stuff. Like IU's offense was awesome to watch. Guys played with confidence, which is really hard to get college players to do. And if you don't believe me, just turn on any college game really throughout the season that's not IU and watch these guys get open shots and kind of look confused and unsure of what they're supposed to do. So I think Crean was big on that. It was just big on like reps, getting shots up, running, all that kind of stuff in practice. And Archie's going to emphasize defense more. I mean, I don't necessarily think he's going to like bench his best player. I mean, I think we all would love for that to happen because again, I think that would feed into like the Indiana vibe of like, we're going to throw our best player back on the bench if he's not playing hard enough kind of stuff. I don't know if he'll take it that far, but defense is definitely a priority. And I think he's going to stress to Blackman in a way, not like go play defense because I'm the boss and I'm telling you to do it, but more like, hey, James, listen, there's two ends of the floor here. And the reason NBA scouts don't love you is because you don't play defense that great. So let's figure this out. I'm going to help you figure out how to play defense and have an impact on that end and that kind of stuff. And I think that's more what's going to be going on there.
Are there any players on the current roster that you think might struggle more than others with the switch, either because of style or because of maybe the demands that Archie will put on them?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I'm curious to see how Bryant plays because Bryant, I don't necessarily think he's going to get worse, but I've always been intrigued by him.
Yeah.
I don't even know how. I think a lot of Indiana fans would agree with me on that. That it was kind of frustrating to watch Caleb Swanigan be as good as he was this year because you're thinking like that should be what Bryant is, and it's so unfair to like expect things from guys. It's so unfair to be like Thomas Bryant. Why aren't you one of the top 3 players in the country like Caleb Swanigan? Like that's not fair to expect out of anybody. But at the same time, he has the tools.
He had his
so
moments.
You're kind of hoping
you saw it.
Yeah. So I'm
it.
intrigued to see how he fits into this. I could see him actually being better, but I don't really know. Yeah, I don't really. That's not to say that I don't think it's going to happen, but it's hard for me to like pinpoint what player. I guess Priller maybe. Priller might be worse off.
Of the young guys, guys like Deron Davis, Devontae Green, Juwan Morgan, who have obviously shown flashes, and now kind of take that next step up in terms of their role. Which of those guys are you intrigued by the most as they continue to develop?
Juwan Morgan for me. I love. He seems to be there seems to be like a passing of the baton of like the guy off the bench, like the hustle guy that has so much potential ever since like Oladipo, and then really I guess like what would be the lineage? There's like Oladipo and then like Troy Williams and then OG and now Morgan. I guess that would be the lineage. I don't know, like just guys that are just like they come in, they make an impact. You see the potential. And I don't know if they're going to tap into that potential and reach their full potential or whatever, but Yeah, Morgan's definitely the answer for me. I love what he can do. I think he could be what we wanted Anunoby to be. And that's not to say I think he'll like be that good or whatever, but I think he could kind of fill that niche really well of being able to guard a lot of different positions and being able to be a really, really, really good college player. Because that's part of it is like some of these guys you talk about like their NBA potential and where they'll fit in and all that kind of stuff, but college is a completely different game. And if you can get a guy with that kind of size and athleticism, I mean, they can just be absolutely devastating in college. And I think Morgan could be that guy. So I'm excited to see what he can do.
And the key for him is just health. He's had so many nagging injuries over the years. It's really
right.
So you mentioned OG. I'm curious just to get, he had such an interesting college career because he didn't play much as a freshman early, and then is just like this, shooting star that comes along, and then he's hurt last year. How will you remember him as a college player, and what do you think he'll ultimately become in the NBA?
I mean, it's unfair to him, but I guess like I'll remember him as like unsatisfied. I'll be unsatisfied, I guess, with his college career, which is totally unfair. Like he was very, very good, but I think you're expecting it. The worst thing that happened to him was Victor Oladipo. I mean, like that was if Victor Oladipo never played at IU, everyone would think OG was fine and whatever. It's just that like you saw what Oladipo did, the jump that he made. Figuratively and sometimes literally, the jumps that he would make were just insane. But you saw what Oladipo was capable of, and you're like, okay, Anunoby is going to be that. And he wasn't quite that. He was obviously super raw and figuring it out as he goes. And you see the flashes, and sometimes like the flashes would almost make you more upset that like he doesn't do that all the time. Instead of just like enjoying what he did bring to the table, you're like, well, why don't you do that more? But yeah, he was. I mean, you could obviously tell why people are so high on him, why scouts love him, his athleticism, his rebounding instincts, all that kind of stuff, his defensive prowess. I'm not really into, I mean, obviously I like college a lot, but I can't really figure out NBA draft potential. And I'm not into projecting guys because I just I'm not good at it, but I mean, you see what like Kawhi Leonard's capable of. Kawhi Leonard wasn't that great in college either. So I mean, he was pretty good. Kawhi Leonard gave up 41 points to Jimmer Fredette in a game. So if that that gives you any idea how he blossomed into what he is. I don't know if OG can be Kawhi Leonard, but I mean, like that's certainly capable. You can't teach the physical tools. So like once you have the size and the athleticism and the length that he has, I mean, the sky's the limit. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you think about his career, probably be a little unsatisfying, but I don't think that's his fault. I think that's more our fault for expecting so much of a guy just because I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like it was pretty much just because of Oladipo. I mean, like that has a lot to do with what the hype around OG was, for me at least.
Oh, sure. I mean, Troy was measured up against, everybody kind of looked at Oladipo's, freshman to sophomore to junior, and especially with OG because he was kind of off the radar like Victor, the comparisons were inevitable even though the games that they played were so different. I think it's a good comparison. Speaking of Victor, I'm curious, who is, as we reflect a little bit, on the Crean era, who was your favorite player from the Crean era? Was it Victor or somebody else?
Yeah, probably. I'm trying to think who. I mean, maybe Sheehy. I really like Sheehy. I like Sheehy. Just like
I thought that's who you
causing trouble. Yeah, just like he's always mixing it up, always being an antagonist. I love those guys like that. I think Holmes has to. I mean, I guess like Yogi is probably like I think Yogi's gonna. When we look back on it, Yogi's gonna be the face of the Crean era. That would be my guess. And he's probably got to be the answer. He's probably like my knee jerk answer, but if I really thought about it, I'd probably say Yogi, just because of what he represented for so long and how solid he was and all that kind of stuff. Yogi was perfect for Indiana. Came at the right time, like an Indiana kid, like that. Like if Archie Miller just lands one Yogi Ferrell after another, Indiana basketball is going to be fine. It's going to be in great shape. That is to me the quintessential Indiana basketball recruit is a Yogi Ferrell, a 4-year guy who gets the culture, who is team first, all that kind of stuff. So he's probably my answer. But like, man, there's so many great ones. That's the thing, is like I spent so much time ripping on Crean, but like, man, he did bring some great talent to Bloomington, that's for sure.
How will you remember the Tom Crean era?
So I've kind of like backed off on my Crean criticism because I obviously, like, I was very vocal. For anybody who like follows me on Twitter or knows my history with Tom Crean, like, I was very vocal about 2013, 2014 or so. I think that was when I reached my peak. I guess hatred would probably be the word for his coaching ability, at least. I never really. I'm thinking back to like how I treated him. Like, I don't think I ever took it like too far. I don't think I was ever really like personal with my insults of him and stuff like that. But I don't know. As time wore on, I think I learned to appreciate him a little bit. Like the role that he played in Indiana. I still don't think he was the right man for the job. I think like Indiana should always aspire to being one of the best programs in the country, and I don't think it was ever going to happen with him. But you know, I think he played a very important role in building Indiana, and I think it's pretty cool to see that he still has no bad blood towards Indiana and towards the people and all that kind of stuff. He reminds me a lot of, and this is a super niche reference that no one listening to this is going to understand, but whatever. It's been brought up to me living in Ohio. John Cooper at Ohio State, who was the coach of Ohio State football forever and would like he'd win 9 games every year, 10 games, then lose to Michigan and then like lose in the bowl game. And they would finish the year like 10-3 or something. And then he ended up getting fired and Ohio State hired Jim Tressel and brought the program back and all that kind of stuff. But John Cooper still like lives around Columbus and he's still involved with Ohio State football, and people at the time wanted him fired so badly, but now like, you know, he's kind of like a lovable little, you know, like, yeah, the Cooper years, like they weren't the best, but you know, they got us to that next step that we wanted. So I guess that's the comparison I think of with Crean. I wouldn't say that like he was he's obviously not a great coach, but he's a very good coach. And I wrote a piece about Archie Miller, and I talked about the kind of the Crean era a little bit. And I would say that like Crean probably deserved better than what Indiana fans ultimately gave him. But at the same time, I think Indiana deserves better than what Crean gave him. And it just wasn't a good match. And, you know, now that it's done and now that Archie's in play, I can step back and say like, you know, he wasn't as bad as what I probably made him out to be, but at the same time, I think this is the best decision that Archie's taken over. So,
yeah, you know, the interesting thing about the Cooper comparison is if Crean had the commensurate like consistency that Cooper had, he probably would still be the coach. You know, it was just those 2 huge dips in 2014 and then, you know, and obviously last year that really, you know, that kind of inconsistency that did him in. But
yeah,
as you said, probably for the better in the long term.
Yeah, it's just a little too volatile. I mean, like Indiana you got to ask yourself, like, what do you want to be as a program? And like, yeah, what Crean did was totally, like, if he did that at Ohio State, I would be totally fine with it. And that's a whole nother conversation. Like, people are kind of getting on Dad Mata for losing too much recently and all that kind of stuff. And what's the difference between Crean and Mata and all that kind of stuff? And I said, well, the difference is Indiana and Ohio State. I mean, like, Indiana, what do you want your program to be? And if you want it to be one of the elites, one of the blue bloods, one of the on down the line of Duke at Kentucky and like compete with those every single year, I don't know, you can't accept missing the tournament a couple times every other year or whatever. That's just, you can't do that. I mean, like if he was coaching if Tom Crean was coaching at Notre Dame fans should be ecstatic that they had that kind of success where they won a couple conference titles and made a few Sweet 16s and all that kind of stuff. That's totally acceptable at other schools. But as soon as Indiana says, yes, this is good enough for us, then that's what you're going to get. And that's what you settle for. And again, to outsiders, it's probably ridiculous, but I don't know. Sometimes you have to be a little ridiculous to achieve what you want to achieve. So
yeah. A couple final questions for you. You know, everything about Archie so far has been positive. I mean, I think even IU fans who weren't quite sure if that was the right hire when it was made have come around and are like, this guy's saying all the right things, doing all the right things. So you mentioned, John Gross at Illinois, you thought that obviously was going to be great.
Sure.
But it didn't turn out quite like you thought. If Archie Miller at Indiana doesn't work for some reason, why do you think that would be? Can you even wager a guess on why it might not work out? Because right now, great.
I guess we don't have a ton of data to go off of with Archie as a head coach. He is really young. He had the Elite Eight appearance in 2014. I guess that would be the concern is, like obviously all signs point to him being a great coach and he knows what he's doing and all that kind of stuff, but he hasn't really sustained this for a long time. I guess that could maybe be something to worry about, that, maybe the Dayton thing was like he got the right recruiting class at the right time and then just rode them out and won a lot of games with them. And that's all that really was. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what else. Maybe I will say that, like, obviously coaching at IU is completely different than coaching at Dayton. And so many people, and ultimately what doomed Gross is, I'm jumping all over the place, I know, but what doomed Gross to me was that John Gross was a great assistant coach. If I could tell him, if all the money was equal and I could control his career, I would tell him just be Thad Matta's assistant for the rest of your life, and we'll figure out a way to pay you what you would make if you're a head coach, because you're an absolutely perfect assistant coach. And being a head coach has so many different responsibilities that I think a lot of people know of, but they don't really give thought to, like what an everyday life of a head coach is. Dealing with donors and recruiting and all that kind of stuff, and you're basically a politician more than anything else. And that's true going from assistant to head coach just as much as it's true going from head coach of Dayton to head coach of Indiana. So I guess maybe like that becomes overwhelming for him, being the face of, the flagship school of the most basketball crazed state in the country. Maybe that could, I don't think it will. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here that maybe that could happen, but I don't know. I guess like if you're worried about something, you worry about him being a little young and not necessarily having a track record of success, like, the pipe dream guys, like the Brad Stevens and the Billy Donovans that everybody wanted to come to Bloomington. They might be a little disappointed because Archie's been to one Elite Eight in 2014, and that's pretty much the sum of his success. But I don't know. I believe in the guy, and I'm going to give him as long as he needs to. It's going to take me a while to stop believing him, basically.
Well, good. That's good to hear.
So.
How? My last question for you, and this is kind of a general fan question. So Miles Bridges decided to come back to Michigan State. I looked at that, and I was actually excited, even though he's going to be terrorizing, obviously, Indiana and the rest of the Big Ten teams. I still like seeing guys stay in college and for the Big Ten to be as good as possible. And I took some heat for that because, obviously that's going to make Michigan State a much tougher out. How do you view something like that? From an Ohio State fan perspective, are you excited to see a guy like Miles Bridges back?
Oh, definitely. I'm definitely excited. Like I'm with you on that. Like, it's good for just college basketball in general. And I mean, it's not fun for our teams to have to play him, but I don't know, you want to play good teams when you're playing college basketball. That's what you want. You want I guess some fans would rather, play garbage teams, and you win the title, you still win the title, and who cares how you played to get there. But I don't know, as a player, like you want to play, like I think back on some of the teams we played against when I was at Ohio State, and I don't think it would have meant as much to like my freshman year in 2007, we went to the Final Four. We only lost one game in the Big Ten, and Wisconsin was really good that year, and some other teams were pretty decent. And I don't think it would mean as much if all the teams were terrible. So I want teams to be good. I want the product of college basketball. I want the Big Ten to be good. I mean, I'm not really big on conference pride stuff when it comes to the tournament time and people start cheering for. It is absolutely insane to me, the idea of that IU fans should cheer for Purdue in the NCAA tournament because it looks good for the Big Ten. Like, that's a totally stupid line of thought to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, I think this idea that convincing college basketball players that coming back is not the worst idea in the world is going to be good for everybody moving forward. And yeah, it's going to be awesome, and it's going to make IU beating Michigan State next year that much sweeter. I mean, isn't that ultimately what it comes down to? We want Assembly Hall to be rocking as often as possible. And you're telling me that a top 5 Michigan State team coming into Assembly Hall versus like the 17th ranked Michigan State team without Miles Bridges coming into Assembly Hall, like which one's more exciting? Obviously the top 5 team, So yeah, let's cheer for that. That's really what we want. If you spin it that way, like we're trying to put forth this idea that Assembly Hall is the best atmosphere in college basketball. The only way you can do that is to have great teams keep coming in there and get the place rowdy. And yeah, so that helps with that. So this is a good thing.
That's right. And let's be confident. Bring on your best, and we'll do our best, and let's see.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, Michigan State had obviously a ton of problems this year, and they were really young, and we see it. We saw it with Duke this year as well. Like, just because the team coming into the year bringing stuff back and all that kind of stuff means that they're going to be good. That's not how it works. You know, they might be good. They might be the best team in the country next year, but they might not be. So, I'll save the freaking out for when IU goes to Breslin Center and loses by 30 or something. Then maybe we'll freak out and be like, I regret saying I was glad Miles Bridges came back. But until that happens, I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, you can read Mark's work at theringer.com. And Ringer University, the podcast, is that still going to be focused on college basketball during the offseason?
Yeah, we're going to bring it back, talking about NBA draft stuff. Off-season stories, Patrick Ewing being hired at Georgetown, just all the college basketball never really stops. So we'll talk about all the fun stuff. Recruiting, hopefully, maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to get into recruiting a little bit, which, by the way, speaking of that, we're talking IU and recruiting, the fact that Archie's like getting these guys to stay committed to IU, like that's a big deal, right?
It's a huge deal. I guess that's a good question for you. How important do you think it is that, no one's left? I mean, outside of the guys who may go to the NBA, and these aren't guys he recruited, they all decide to stick with him. That's pretty rare, isn't it, when a new coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks volumes of him. I mean, like, it's easy for me to say I love the guy because I played for him, and I'm obviously biased, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But like, these guys don't know who he is. They, and for him to win them over that quickly is like insane to me. So, I don't know. That's pretty awesome. So hopefully, who's the white whale now for IU? Is it Langford? He's the guy we're.
Oh yeah, Romeo Langford, and then Keon Brooks is in the 2018 class. So a couple of
I don't follow recruiting. I don't follow recruiting as much as I should, but I know of Langford. I watched him on TV last year, so we got to make that happen. So
I hope so.
Just swing. But don't be afraid to swing and miss on a few Indiana guys and have them trickle over to Columbus. I wouldn't be that upset if that happened. I wouldn't be upset if we start getting like Ohio State, like we got the Greg Odens and the Mike Conleys and the Deshaun Thomas, and that pipeline is starting to get squeezed off, and we need to get that Indiana pipeline back. So
let us have the first pick, and then you can have the rest.
Right. It'll be like a draft. Yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome if they did a draft with all the top 10 prospects from Indiana every year? Yeah, you get a draft them.
That'd be great.
Oh, that'd be funny.
That would be great.
All right.
Mark, thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Yep, for sure. Follow him at Club Trillion on Twitter, and hopefully we'll have you on the show again soon.
Sounds good.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Assembly Call. If you want to support the show, please share The Assembly Call with a friend or family member who loves IU basketball like you do. You can also visit assemblycall.com/support to learn a few ways you can help, from donating to grabbing official Assembly Call gear to buying IU merchandise that you'd buy anyway, but using our special affiliate links, which get us a commission. We rely on the support of audience members like you to keep the Assembly Call alive and growing. Once again, the URL is assemblycall.com/support. Thank you, and as always, go Hoosiers.